If you'd met me a year ago, you'd have called me the boring guy in the corner, the one who fixes things quietly, doesn't argue in meetings, and goes home on time. That was the plan. I'd done the startup grind in my 20s. I'd watched family culture turn into unpaid overtime and sudden layoffs. By 30, I wanted a stable paycheck, decent health insurance, and a job where my work mattered without my name being turned into a slogan. Then I joined Halcyon Systems. We were a mid-sized SaaS company that handled payment reconciliation for retailers. Nothing glamorous, but the kind of plumbing that keeps money moving. And when that plumbing fails, everyone panics. Clients don't care why their nightly settlements didn't post. They just see missing dollars and start emailing in all caps. My first week, I sat in a conference room with a whiteboard full of red circles and numbers that looked like blood pressure readings. Chargebacks were spiking. Batches were timing out. Our biggest customer, an enterprise retailer that made up almost a third of our revenue, had put us on a performance improvement plan. Yes, the customer put us on one. The CFO, a sharp guy named Raymond, didn't sugarcoat it. "We have 9 weeks of runway if this continues," he said, tapping the spreadsheet. "If we lose Titan Retail, we don't get to argue about strategy. We just close." The CEO, Darren, smiled the whole time. That's what he did when things were on fire. Smile, nod, and promise alignment. The CTO, Melissa, talked about re-architecting like it was a poster, not a plan. After the meeting, my manager pulled me aside. "Evan," he said, "I know you were hired for platform work, but we need a tourniquet. Tonight." I went back to my desk and opened the incident logs. The problem wasn't one bug. It was a chain reaction. Duplicate events, non-idempotent jobs, retrees that multiplied the load, and a database that was being used like a dumping ground. Every time one service hiccuped, 3 others panicked and tried to fix it by hammering the same tables harder. Everyone wanted a rewrite. I didn't, not with 9 weeks of cash. So I built a stabilizer, an internal service that sat between the event stream and our settlement pipeline, deduplicated messages, enforced idempotency keys, and throttled retrees with real back-off instead of try again immediately because vibes. It wasn't pretty. It was pragmatic. It was what you build when you can't afford heroics. For 3 weeks, my life became coffee, logs, and dim office lights. I left after midnight, came back before the stand-up, and pretended I was fine because nobody wants to hear, "I'm barely holding it together," from the guy you're counting on. The night it finally worked, I didn't celebrate. At 2:13 a.m., I watched the graphs flatten out like someone had turned down the noise in the world. The queue drained. The timeouts stopped. Titan Retail's settlement files finished processing in 12 minutes instead of 3 hours. When I checked the reconciliation totals, they matched. Exactly. I sat there staring at the screen, waiting for the other shoe. Nothing happened. By morning, Slack was full of applause emojis and phrases like, "Game changer." Raymond, the CFO, sent me a private message. "You just bought us time." Darren called in all hands that Friday. He stood on the little stage in the break room with the company logo behind him and said, "Our engineering team pulled off a miracle. This is why I believe in Halcyon." Then he said my name, loud, in front of everyone. People clapped. Someone slapped my back. Melissa nodded like she'd personally coded it. Darren made a joke about finally sleeping, and everyone laughed like we were in a movie where the crisis is over and the credits can roll. I remember thinking, stupidly, that maybe this time would be different. On Monday, an email hit my inbox from legal. Quick signature needed. No greeting, no context. Just a calendar invite for 3:30 p.m., titled IP Filing a Routine Documentation, with an attachment labeled Invention Assignment and Declaration Backdated. I stared at the file name for a long time. I wasn't naive. I knew most companies have IP clauses. I'd signed them before. But backdated paperwork is a different animal. Backdated paperwork is what people do when they're trying to change the story after the fact. At 3:29, I walked into the small conference room next to legal. A woman I'd never met was already there, laptop open, polite smile locked on. She introduced herself as Allison, outside counsel. Outside counsel. For a routine signature. She slid a printed packet across the table. "This is just to clean up our records," she said, voice calm. "We're filing protections around the settlement optimization work." "Protections," I repeated. "All standard," she said. "We're moving quickly because of timing." The word timing landed heavy, like a hint I wasn't supposed to notice. Acquisition, fundraising, audit, something. I opened the packet. The first page wasn't a simple acknowledgement. It was a declaration for a patent filing, with inventor lines already typed in. Darren's name was there. Melissa's name was there. A VP of product I'd met twice was there. My name was nowhere. The second page was an assignment of inventions backdated to my start date, with a clause that said I confirmed I had no outstanding claims for additional compensation related to the work. The third page was worse, a statement that I had developed the core methodology under the direction and supervision of executive leadership, and that any prior work I'd done in the area was fully disclosed and assigned. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Allison watched me carefully like she'd done this 100 times. "If you initial here and here," she said, tapping 2 boxes with a pen, "we can finalize the filing today." I didn't touch the pen. "Can I have a copy to review?" I asked. Her smile didn't move, but her eyes did. "Of course," she said, and then added very softly, "We'd appreciate it if you didn't share it internally until it's executed." I looked up. "Why?" She paused just long enough to be deliberate. "Because we want to avoid confusion." Confusion. That's what they call it when the person who actually built something realizes they're being written out of it. I closed the packet. My hands were steady, but my stomach wasn't. "I'm not signing this today," I said. Allison's smile finally slipped. "Just a fraction." "Evan," she said, using my first name like it was a lever, "this is routine. You don't want to create issues for yourself." That was the moment I understood the praise on Friday wasn't gratitude. It was positioning. They'd needed the miracle. Now they needed ownership of it. And whatever timing meant, it was worth enough to them that they were willing to backdate the truth. I walked out of that room with the packet tucked under my arm, and the weird cold certainty that the software hadn't saved the company. It had made me valuable enough to steal from, and I hadn't even seen the full plan yet. I didn't go back to my desk right away. I walked past the kitchen, past the fake plants, and the "We're a family" poster someone had put up after the last round of layoffs, and I just stood near the window for a minute, like I was waiting for my breathing to return to normal. Because the packet in my hands wasn't a misunderstanding. It was choreography. Names typed in, roles assigned, story set, and the one person who could ruin it, me, was supposed to initial 2 little boxes and make it all legal. I kept replaying Allison's last line, "You don't want to create issues for yourself." That wasn't legal advice. It was a warning. When I finally sat down, I didn't open Slack. I didn't vent to a coworker. I didn't even tell my manager. I opened my notes app and wrote one sentence. If they're backdating paperwork, they're already lying to someone bigger than me. Then I did what I'd always done when systems started acting strange. I started collecting logs. First, I pulled my own commit history. Not screenshots, exports, hashes, timestamps, merge requests with reviewers listed. I grabbed the ticket IDs tied to every change, the incident that started it, the follow-up, the escalation from Titan, retail, the internal approvals. Then I opened my email. Over the last month, Darren had sent 3 different messages with 3 different tones. The first was broad and inspirational. "We're counting on engineering to step up." The second was urgent. "Evan, can you prioritize the settlement failures? Titan is angry." The third was quiet and personal, sent at 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. Need this fixed, whatever it takes. Keep me posted. Those emails weren't just praise, they were proof. I saved them into a folder and backed that folder up twice. Once to a private drive, once to an encrypted USB I kept from a previous job. Paranoid? Maybe. But paranoia is just pattern recognition after you've been burned. At 6:10 p.m., my manager Greg messaged, "Hey, do you have a minute? Darren wants to close out paperwork. Nothing big." Nothing big. I told him I was tied up and asked if we could talk tomorrow. Greg responded with a thumbs up like this was normal. It wasn't. The next morning, I walked into the office and felt something different before I even sat down. People wouldn't look at me the same way. Not hostile, not cold, just careful. Like someone had told them a version of a story and they weren't sure which parts were safe to repeat. At 9:04 a.m., Melissa, the CTO, posted in the engineering channel, "Great progress on the Settlement Stabilization Initiative. Executive leadership is aligning on next steps for IP protection. More details soon." Executive leadership, that phrase made my jaw tighten, because I knew how that stabilizer had been built. Late-night arguments with myself, testing and staging, replaying events, rolling out gradually because one wrong move could take down billing for thousands of stores. There was no executive leadership in any of that. There was me and a rotating cast of exhausted engineers who helped when they could. 10 minutes later, my access changed. Not all of it. That would have been obvious. Just enough to make my day friction. My repo permissions flipped from maintainer to developer. I could still commit, but I couldn't merge without approval. My production read access, which I'd had since day one, suddenly required a request through an internal portal. I stared at the screen for a long second, hoping it was a mistake. Then my phone buzzed. Email from IT. Role updates applied as part of standard access audit. Standard audit. Right after I refused to sign. I leaned back in my chair and felt the anger rise, clean and hot. I wanted to walk into Darren's office and say, "Are you serious? You're doing this after everything?" But another part of me, older, more tired, more experienced, knew exactly what that would accomplish. It would give them the thing they want most, a reaction, a scene, something they could label unprofessional if this turned into a dispute, something HR could write down in neat little sentences. So instead, I stood up and walked to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and stared at myself in the mirror like I was giving myself instructions. Stay calm, stay precise, make them underestimate you. When I came back, an HR invite was waiting on my calendar for Tuesday p.m. Subject, documentation follow-up. No agenda, no attendees listed besides me, HR, and legal. That was the moment I understood what kind of play this was. They weren't trying to negotiate. They were trying to corner me. I spent the next few hours working like everything was normal, while quietly taking screenshots of every access change and every message that mentioned executive leadership and IP protection. At 1:57, I walked to the HR floor. The conference room was the same one people got fired in, the one with the glass walls and the view of the kitchen, so everyone could pretend they weren't watching. Inside, a woman from HR named Denise sat with a notebook open, pen ready, like this was a performance review. Allison from legal was there again, laptop open, and next to them sat Darren, not smiling this time. He didn't stand up when I walked in. He just gestured at the chair across from him like a judge. "Evan," he said, calm but tight. "We need to wrap this up today." Denise nodded as if she already knew what this meant. Allison slid the packet toward me again. Same pages, same typed names. Darren leaned forward. "I'm not sure why you're hesitating," he said. "This is standard. Every company does this." I kept my voice even. "If it's standard, why is it backdated?" A small pause, just long enough for the room to shift. Darren's eyes flicked to Allison. Allison's eyes flicked to Denise. Denise's pen hovered, like she wasn't sure which script to follow. Darren cleared his throat. "It's not backdated," he said. "It's just Aligning dates for the filing. Aligning dates, I repeated. So it matches a timeline? He didn't answer that directly. Instead, he changed gears. Look, Darren said, dropping his voice like he was doing me a favor. You did great work. We appreciate it. But this is how the business functions. We can't have confusion about ownership. Ownership, there it was. Denise finally spoke. This is also about your continued employment here, she said softly, like she was offering a blanket. That line was calculated. HR never says things by accident. My stomach tightened again, but my face stayed still. I picked up the packet and flipped to the inventor page, tapping the names. So this is who you're filing as inventors, I said. Darren's jaw tightened. It's not about ego. It's not about ego, I said, nodding slowly. Then add my name. The room went quiet, and in that quiet, something clicked. Because they weren't just trying to take credit. They were trying to take the value attached to the credit. The protection, the leverage, the money. And I didn't know it yet. But that decision, my refusal to sign, was about to cost them everything. I didn't leave that HR room angry. Not at first. I walked back to my desk with a strange, hollow calm. Like my body had already decided this wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a process, a machine. And the only question left was whether I'd let it run over me or learn how it moved. Greg tried to catch me near the elevators. Hey, he said, voice low, eyes darting like he didn't want anyone to hear. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said automatically. He nodded, relieved, like he'd just checked a box. Then he leaned in. Just keep your head down. Darren's under pressure. Under pressure? That phrase followed me all the way back to my chair, because pressure didn't make people accidentally type 3 executive names onto an inventor line and leave mine out. Pressure didn't make HR threaten continued employment over a signature. That was intent. I opened my laptop and tried to work. I really did. I stared at a backlog ticket about optimizing batch latency, and the absurdity of it hit me so hard I almost laughed. They were trying to erase me from the thing that was keeping their lights on, and they still wanted me to improve it. At 11:18 a.m., another access change rolled through. My VPN certificate got flagged for renewal. My Jira permissions dropped to comment only on platform epics. Not enough to stop me from doing my job, but enough to make me feel watched, fenced in, reminded. I didn't message anyone. I didn't complain. I opened a private document and started a clean timeline. Date. Time. Who said what? What changed? What I could prove. It felt cold, writing my own life like an incident report. But that was the point. If this turned into a story, they'd control it. If it stayed a timeline, the truth would. At lunchtime, Raymond, our CFO, sent me a one-line message. Can you step out for 5? No emojis, no small talk, just that. We met in the parking garage because it was the only place without cameras pointed directly into a glass room. He looked older than he had a month ago. His tie was loose. His eyes had that exhausted sharpness of someone doing math in their head all day. I'm not supposed to talk to you about this, he said. I didn't respond. I just waited. He exhaled through his nose. We're in diligence. That word landed like a weight. Diligence meant investors, acquisition, big money circling a wounded company and deciding what it was worth. Titan? I asked. Titan is part of it, he said. But it's bigger. Darren's been shopping options, private equity, strategic buyers. He thinks if he can show proprietary tech, the valuation holds. Proprietary tech, I repeated. Raymond didn't smile. The settlement stabilization is being positioned as proprietary. I felt something in my chest tighten, like a band pulling. So that's what this is, I said quietly. They're trying to claim it for the deal. Raymond didn't deny it. He rubbed his face with one hand. If it goes through without a problem, it saves hundreds of jobs, maybe more. And if it goes through with fraud, he finally looked directly at me. That's the nightmare. He hesitated, then added, There's a board call Thursday. Darren wants all loose ends tied up before then. Loose ends. I understood suddenly what I was in their eyes. Not an employee, not a person, a loose end. Raymond's voice dropped lower. Evan, I'm not telling you what to do, but you need to protect yourself. This is going to get ugly. Then he walked away like he hadn't said anything at all. I sat in my car for a long minute, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing, and something inside me finally cracked. Not in a dramatic way, not in a movie way, just a quiet shift. The last bit of loyalty draining out, because I realized I'd been saving people who never wanted saving. They wanted credit. They wanted leverage. They wanted me useful and silent. That night, I didn't open the repo. I didn't troubleshoot. I didn't push fixes. I called an attorney, not a friend who knows someone, not a random search result with a shiny website. A real employment and IP lawyer recommended by a former coworker who'd survived a nasty non-compete dispute. Her name was Carla Bennett. She listened without interrupting while I walked her through the packet, the backdating, the HR pressure, the access changes, and Raymond's diligence. When I finished, there was a short pause on the line. Then she said, "Do you still have copies of what they asked you to sign?" "Yes." "Good. Do not sign anything. Do not resign. Do not threaten. Do not warn them." "I wasn't planning to." "Great," she said, "because your advantage is that you're calm and you have evidence. Their disadvantage is that they're rushing." She asked for the names, the dates, the exact language. She asked whether I'd used any prior code from another job. She asked whether the company had a formal invention disclosure process. Then she said the sentence that made my stomach drop and my mind clear at the same time. "They're not trying to document your work. They're trying to launder ownership." Carla drafted 2 emails for me that night, one to HR and legal, requesting written clarification on why the declaration was backdated, why inventor names were assigned without technical review, and asking for a complete copy of any filings made or planned in my name or relating to my work. The second was a legal preservation notice, a request that all relevant communications, drafts, access logs, and internal approvals related to the settlement, stabilization, and IP filings be retained. Not an accusation, a spotlight. I sent them at 9:07 a.m. the next morning from my work email, CCing my personal email for record keeping. Professional, neutral, precise. Denise replied within 13 minutes. "Received. We will revert." No warmth, no reassurance, just corporate fog. Then legal replied. "Not Allison, a different name. Martin Hale, General Counsel. Evan, thank you. Let's meet today to align." Align. The word made my skin crawl. At 10:30 a.m., my badge stopped working at the side entrance. I stood there for a second, swiping again, pretending it was a glitch. A couple people walked by and avoided my eyes. Finally, I went around to the main entrance and got in behind a group. When I reached my desk, my laptop was already locked out. A message on screen. "Contact IT for access assistance." There it was. No more subtle friction, no more careful fencing. A clean cutoff. Greg appeared beside my desk like someone had summoned him. His face was pale and tight. "Hey," he said quickly, not meeting my eyes. "Denise wants you in HR. Now." I stood slowly, keeping my posture neutral, like my body was a sentence that couldn't be misquoted. As I followed him down the hallway, my phone buzzed with a new email notification. Subject line, "Administrative leave, effective immediately." And underneath it, in the preview text, the line that told me Darren had chosen war. "Do not access company systems while we investigate." I didn't know it yet, but they'd just made the one mistake you can't undo. Because once you put someone on investigation for refusing to sign backdated paperwork, you're not managing a problem anymore. You're creating evidence. Denise didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She sat across from me in that glass conference room, hands folded, and read from a printed page like she was announcing a weather report. Effective immediately, you're being placed on paid administrative leave, she said. This is a standard step while we investigate concerns regarding confidential information and internal communications. I kept my face neutral. What concerns? Allison wasn't there this time. Instead, Martin Hale, general counsel, sat beside Denise with his laptop open, eyes flat. Martin answered without looking up. You sent a preservation notice. You copied your personal email. That raises questions. So asking you to preserve evidence raises questions, I said carefully, but backdating an invention declaration doesn't. Denise's pen paused. Martin finally looked at me. This isn't a debate, he said. You'll surrender your badge and laptop. You'll be escorted while you collect personal items. You are not to access company systems during the investigation. I nodded once. Put that in writing. Denise slid the email printout closer like she'd been waiting for that line. I read it. It was vague by design. No specific allegation, no timeline. Just the word investigation repeated like a shield. I handed over my badge. An IT guy I recognized from onboarding stood at the door, uncomfortable, eyes on the carpet. He carried an evidence bag like I was a criminal, not the person who'd kept Titan Retail from walking. I didn't argue. I shut my laptop down properly. I took my notebook, my jacket, the framed photo of my mom that sat under my monitor. I didn't slam drawers. I didn't glare at anyone. As we walked through the open floor, conversations died in real time. Heads turned away. The whole place smelled like coffee and fear. At the elevator, Denise said, almost kindly, "If you cooperate, this can be quick." I looked at her. "I am cooperating, I'm just not signing lies." Outside, the air felt sharper than it should have. I got into my car and didn't start it for a full minute. My hands weren't shaking. My stomach wasn't flipping. I felt clean, like the last thread of maybe they're just disorganized had finally snapped. I forwarded the administrative leave email to Carla with one line. They escalated. Took badge, laptop. No specific allegation. Her reply came fast. Do not speak to anyone there by phone. Everything in writing. Today we notify the board audit committee and the whistleblower channel. Their actions look like retaliation. Whistleblower channel. Halcyon had one, technically. A compliance hotline posted on a dusty internet page that nobody ever used because people liked their paychecks. But I also knew something else. Once a board is in diligence, everyone suddenly pretends they care about process. Carla drafted a short, surgical message addressed to the chair of the audit committee, routed through the hotline vendor and the board's legal alias. No emotion, just facts. Backdated invention declaration, inventor list excludes me. HR pressure tied to continued employment. Preservation notice sent. Immediately after, access changes, then administrative leave and device seizure framed as investigation for making the request. I attached supporting documents, the packet PDF, my emails, the access change notices, and the administrative leave email. Timestamp, organized. Impossible to dismiss as confusion. I hit send at 2:41 p.m. Then I waited. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a number I recognized. Darren. I let it ring out. He called again. And again. Then an email hit my personal inbox from a sender I hadn't seen before. Raymond C., CFO. Subject. Please call me. I didn't. Not without Carla. Instead, I replied in writing. I'm on counsel's advice to keep communications documented. What do you need? His answer came back like someone typing with shaking hands. Titan asked for you by name. They want a technical walkthrough tomorrow. Darren told them you're unavailable. They're not happy. My chest tightened, not with panic, with understanding. Titan Retail didn't trust Halcyon's leadership. They trusted outcomes. And for the last month, they'd associated those outcomes with one thing. My updates, my incident summaries, my late-night calls where I explained what broke and how we fixed it. If Darren told them I was unavailable, without a real reason, Titan would hear what I heard. Something is wrong. I replied once, short, I'm on administrative leave. Please route them to Melissa and Martin. Raymond didn't answer. At 6:12 p.m., I got a separate email, this time from Titan's technical account manager, Sonia. It wasn't friendly. Evan, we were told you can't join tomorrow. Is that accurate? If so, we need immediate confirmation of who owns the stabilization service and who can explain its controls. This is now a risk review. Risk review. That phrase is what procurement says right before legal says breach. Carla told me not to engage in substantive client communication beyond confirming my status. So I did exactly that. Sonia, I'm currently on administrative leave and cannot access company systems. Please contact Halcyon leadership for next steps. Professional. Minimal. True. I could practically feel the dominoes start tipping, because now Titan had it in writing. The person they relied on was suddenly locked out, and Titan didn't like surprises. The next morning, my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Carla told me to ignore calls, but this one left a voicemail. It was Martin Hale. His voice had changed, less firm, more controlled urgency. Evan, this is Martin. We need to resolve this quickly. Please have your attorney contact me. We're trying to avoid unnecessary complications. Complications? Diligence? Complications. At 9:38 a.m., an email arrived from the compliance hotline vendor with a case number and a single line. Your report has been forwarded to the audit committee. No details. No comfort. But it was confirmation that the message landed where it mattered. Then at 10:05, another email, this time from Halcyon Legal, hit my personal inbox. Subject, litigation hold notice. They were ordering employees to preserve documents related to the settlement stabilization project, IP filings, and communications with Titan. They wouldn't have issued a hold unless someone outside management had demanded answers. Board, buyer, Titan, or all three. Raymond finally wrote back. 2 sentences. The board is furious. Darren says you're misunderstanding paperwork. Nobody's buying it. I read that twice. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something like relief. Not joy, not victory. Just the quiet sensation of weight shifting off my chest. Because I didn't have to convince the company to be fair. I just had to let the right people see what they'd done. At 1:17 p.m., Darren emailed me from his official address. No threats this time. No HR language. Just, let's talk. I think we can make this right. Carla answered for me. She requested full copies of any IP filings, drafted or submitted, a written explanation for inventor selection, confirmation that my administrative leave was not disciplinary, restoration of my employment status pending independent investigation, and a commitment that no retaliation would occur for raising concerns. She also asked to schedule a call with board counsel present. We didn't ask for credit. We asked for a paper trail. Darren didn't respond. Martin didn't respond. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. That evening at 9:46 p.m., my phone buzzed with a new email notification from an address I'd never seen before. Subject line, Special Meeting, Audit Committee. And in the body, one sentence that told me Halcyon's leadership had finally lost control of the story. Your counsel is invited to attend. The special meeting invite wasn't sent by Darren. It wasn't even sent by Martin. It came from the board's outside counsel, a firm name I recognize because big companies use them when they're trying to survive bad decisions. The email was short, clinical, and terrifying in its restraint. Time, dial-in, agenda, and one line that mattered more than anything else. Your counsel is invited to attend. Carla joined the call. I didn't speak unless she told me to. That was the first rule she'd drilled into me. When people who used to ignore you suddenly want a conversation, it's because they're building a record. You either control the record or you become it. The audit committee chair opened with a sentence that sounded like an apology without the word. We're taking these allegations seriously. We've engaged an independent investigation. Then they started asking questions, real ones. Not HR questions designed to trap you. Board questions designed to protect the company from liability. Who drafted the invention declaration? Who selected inventors? Why was it backdated? Who instructed HR to tie the signature to continued employment? Who ordered the access changes? Why was I placed on leave immediately after requesting written clarification and preservation? Carla answered cleanly, point by point, and when she had to, she let the documents speak. The packet, the typed names, the missing name, the email language, the access audit notice, the administrative leave message, the timeline. There was a long pause after the audit chair said, "Understood." Then a different voice joined, tight, controlled, trying to sound calm. "Darren," he started with the tone I'd heard at all hands, warm, reasonable, disappointed. "This has gotten distorted," he said. "Evan's a great engineer. We value him. There was no intent to misrepresent anything. This was paperwork alignment for diligence." The audit chair cut him off. "Darren, stop. This is not a branding meeting." I didn't expect to feel satisfaction in that moment. What I felt was something quieter. The end of confusion. The part where powerful people stop pretending you're emotional and start treating you like a risk factor they can't bully away. The call ended with 3 clear actions. The company would provide full copies of any drafted or submitted IP filings. Within 24 hours, it would produce access logs and HR notes, and it would appoint an independent firm to interview everyone involved, including me, under the protection of the whistleblower policy. 2 hours later, Raymond texted me from a new number. They pulled Darren off diligence. Buyer's counsel is freaking out. A Titan escalated. Titan. That was the pressure point Darren hadn't controlled, because Titan didn't care about internal politics. They cared about stability, ownership, and who could actually explain the controls. Sonia's risk review email had gone to their legal team, and their legal team had done what legal teams do. They asked for written assurances, audit evidence, and a single accountable technical owner. Halcyon leadership couldn't give that without touching my situation. By day 2, the investigation narrative collapsed under its own weight. Denise emailed Carla a revised letter rescinding the insinuations. Martin emailed a clarification that my administrative leave was not disciplinary. IT sent a sterile note that my access changes were under review. Every message was careful because now every message could be read in a deep position. On day 5, Carla and I sat in her conference room while she reviewed a new draft agreement from Halcyon's outside counsel. Not Darren's wording, not HR's wording, legal-grade reality. The company proposed a settlement that did 3 things at once. It corrected the record, it protected the deal, and it buried the mess before it became public. Here's what it included, in plain language. A formal written acknowledgement that I was a primary inventor and author of the settlement stabilization service, backed by a corrected invention disclosure and revised filing documents. A complete withdrawal of the investigation with a statement that no misconduct had been found and that my actions were protected under policy. Money. $1.9 million paid as a structured settlement, part severance, part inventor recognition payment, part release consideration, wired within 5 business days of execution. A neutral reference letter signed by the board chair, not Darren, confirming my role and performance. Mutual non-disparagement and a clean release of claims. A clause requiring Halcyon to notify Titan, formally, that control ownership and documentation existed, with an agreed technical transition plan. Carla looked at me over the pages. "This is them buying certainty," she said. "Not just from you, from the buyer, from the board, from Titan." I nodded slowly. "What happens to Darren?" Carla didn't answer like it was gossip. She answered like it was consequence. "Not your problem, but you're not the only person asking that question." 2 days later, Raymond emailed me, careful but human. "Darren resigned. Martin is out. Melissa is on leave pending review. Board brought in interim leadership. Titan agreed to stay if they get weekly stability reports for 90 days. I read it twice, not because I doubted it, because my brain was adjusting to a world where actions actually had consequences. The signing happened in a sterile office with thick glass and no charm. Halcyon's outside counsel was there. Carla was there. A board representative joined by video. Nobody smiled. Nobody joked. It wasn't a victory lap. It was a cleanup. I signed last after Carla confirmed the wire instructions and the language about inventor credit and non-retaliation. When it was done, the board rep spoke once. "Mr. Parker, on behalf of the company, I'm sorry this happened. It shouldn't have." It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was enough. 5 business days later, the wire hit. 1.9 pin doesn't feel like fireworks when you've spent weeks watching people try to erase you. It feels like quiet proof that you weren't crazy, that the paper trail mattered, that staying calm wasn't weakness, it was strategy. I didn't go back to Halcyon. That part surprises people when they hear the story. They expect the triumphant return, the corner office, the applause. But once you've seen how quickly praise turns into paperwork, you stop craving applause from the same hands that tried to sign you out of existence. I took a month off. I slept. I ate real food. I went through my own notes and realized something that still makes my throat tighten when I say it out loud. I didn't lose control when they cut off my badge. I gained it when I refused to sign. Halcyon survived. The deal went through. Smaller, cleaner, with real disclosures. Titan stayed. The stabilization service kept running, because it was built to run without heroics. And Darren, he never got the story he wanted. Because the thing about paperwork is this. You can use it to steal credit, but you can't use it to erase timestamps. Not forever.